Joe is a longtime friend. I think that I know I have a picture of you from like 2005 at a conference in Orlando, I believe.
Okay.
And I'm sure I was introduced to you back then. I think I have a picture of it's like you and Patty and Karen or something together standing in the
The
small
usual
mall.
suspects.
Usual sex, way back when, 15 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And so we've known each other for a long time. You've been so supportive of TLDC, spoken at all the events. Thank you so much for all that, Joe. And now you're my target in this interview, and we're just gonna get into it. Looks like we have a few people logging in right now. Let's just say hi real quick to Sonia and Cheryl and Eric. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for being here, and we'll just get started. I'm sure some of you are curious about Joe. Joe has been around forever. Just speaking at events, I've seen you do pretty much kind of everything.
Yeah, I'm old, I guess. Yeah.
And you're like the Guildmaster Award, right? You got a Guildmaster.
Yeah, I got the second Guildmaster Award in 2013, I think it was. Yeah, so that was Clark Quinn got the first one. I got the second one. Now there's about 25 or 26 because the e-learning guild gives away one at every conference.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I got the second one. I was shocked at the time. Had no words. I was unusually for me very speechless at the moment that I got it. But now I think people understand that there's going to be given one every time, and so it's more common now. It's more expected now, I guess. So
I remember when you got excited because it was like back then it was kind of Heidi and David, but secretly like, okay, who's it gonna be this time? And then
we didn't even know at the time that there was going to be a second one, right? I mean, Clark Quinn got one, and we thought, oh, that's nice. He deserves it. But then the second time around, it was all hush hush, and I had no clue whatsoever, except that Bill Brandon, the editor of the Learning Guild Solution, the e-Learning Guild Solution magazine, insisted that I be there on time. He knows me on time and sit in the front row because he and his excuse was he wanted all the writers for the Learning Solutions magazine to be together in force so that when they ask everybody to stand up, we would show a force of us all standing together instead of being interspersed throughout the whole crowd. And I'm like, okay. And so I show up 3 minutes early and I can see him going, and I was like, go here. And I was like, oh, okay. Still had no clue at all until
it's fun. It brings back it brings back some good memories for me. Okay, so let me start with this first question, Joe. What are you working on right now?
Oh gosh, it's been an unusual situation. I don't know if you guys heard about this COVID-19 thing going on, but it's caused me to have a slowdown lately because I just finished a big project right before all this happened. And I was ready to start a new one, and then that has now gotten delayed because of this. Because some of the people that were going to be my clients are on furlough. Some of them got laid off, and so on. And now they're talking about, well, we're going to start in August or September. So as far as a client project, I've had a few small ones, but I haven't had anything major lately. So hey, if anybody needs me, I can do pretty much everything. Right. But that doesn't mean I've just been sitting by watching, whatever is on TV lately. I instead decided to start doing more in other areas. And so for one thing, I'm a director with the International Association for Blended Learning. And we had a conference last week that lasted 24 hours. It started at 10 a.m. on April 22nd and ended at 10 a.m. on April 23rd. I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. And I pretty much organized the whole thing. Wow. Although obviously it wasn't just me, there were other people helping, but I completely created the website for it with, I got all the speakers, almost all the speakers signed up. Each speaker had 25 minutes or 50 minutes and had to make sure that the schedule had, enough speakers in it. We had some really great speakers in that list, and I was sorry I couldn't invite more.
Nice.
Yeah. We had so many good ones. Ray Jimenez and Kathy Dirksen, Julie Dirksen. Sorry, and I was thinking of Kathy. Yeah, I'm losing it now. No, but anyway, it doesn't matter. You can go look at it yourself at iabl.org and go to the conference site, and you'll see it there. It was cool because we planned last year to have our first online conference this year, because last year we had it in Dubai, and the year before was in Warsaw, the year before that was Toronto, and the year before that was in Greece, in Kavala, Greece. And so this was the first. So it really, we really left out because we didn't have to cancel anything because we actually planned an online conference this year. So I spent a lot of time working on that, and then we did it all with Zoom, by the way. So I had a 24-hour recording that I then had to, divide up and edit. And when you're doing live stuff like this, sometimes if people are sharing screens and stuff like that, the speakers themselves would do something like, hey, what are your thoughts? And so people put them in the chat window, and then let's wait 5 minutes and see what comes up. And so, when editing, you don't want to have 5 minutes of dead space, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of editing, but I finally got all those uploaded last week, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. So
Nice.
I've been keeping busy. Now I got to update my own website, and there's so many other things going on. Yeah,
all these little things that you've been wanting to get to. This is the time to try to
exactly
get into that.
And I'm also doing this, trying to learn the ukulele, which I got as a gift at Christmas time, and I'm finally picking it up, and I'm learning how to play it a little bit at a time. Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. You have that there.
Yeah, today's Cinco de Mayo.
That's great. So, how about this? Favorite part of your job? What is it?
Oh, my favorite part of my job, I think it would have to be the versatility, the variety of different things I work on. It's not like doing the same thing day after day. I'm one day I'm creating an analysis document. The next day I'm creating a code in Storyline, Captivate, Lectora even. Although we all, and that there's been news about Lectora lately too. You guys heard about that probably. So I love the development work. I love designing and storyboarding and creating scripts for narration and following up after that. So, it's a multifaceted job, as we all know. I'm not an artist, but I know how to edit artwork. I just can't create it from scratch. And as I just mentioned, I've done a heck of a lot of video editing and audio editing. And so I love the fact that, I'm not really doing the same thing all the time. I have this variety. And that speaks to a lot of my different passions and wants when it comes to the field we work in. So yeah,
you're a people person too, Joe. I don't know if you consider yourself that, but it always seems like you're just so outgoing and friendly.
I've been told that many times, and so I'm starting to believe it. Unfortunately, it because of what the situation, I can't travel anymore. I live right next to Washington Dulles Airport, so it was pretty easy for me to hop on a flight. But it translates online as well, so I think and I'm still getting that out, the people stuff. It's just that it's not as much anymore. So I really do like people. What can I say?
Awesome. Yeah. So I know that you started out like you were a computer science person to begin with, right? Didn't you study like? Didn't you get like? Weren't you a technical person to begin with before you got into e-learning?
Yes and no. Yes. In fact, I got my bachelor's in computer science. Okay. Right. And before that, even in high school, and I attended the American High School of Milan, Italy. And at the time we had this ancient teletypewriter terminal in there that nobody was using because nobody knew what it was for or how to use it. And it was, I asked the math teacher whose classroom it was in, and she said that it was a gift from Honeywell to help, the kids in high school maybe learn how to program and stuff. Now, remember, this is a teletypewriter. It didn't even have a screen. It was all paper, in a very loud keyboard. And she told me, if you type in this command, it'll teach you how to program BASIC. And so I did, and I learned BASIC. And then I learned, what did I learn after that? Fortran, I think it was. Anyway, yes, when I went to college, I got my computer science degree. But while I was still attending university, is when I got into e-learning. So it really, I never really got a full-time coding job. I've always applied my coding and programming knowledge to e-learning, because I started while I was in college to create e-learning for the university I was in. So,
this next question is actually kind of interesting for you. And I think about it because we had Jean Maripodi on yesterday for our accessibility playlist. And
love Jean.
Yeah. She had mentioned that she was an e-learning pioneer. And I actually look at you as being the same type of, I think that you're an e-learning pioneer as well. but so this question is is there anything that you wish you had known when you had started out? But you would kind of help kind of develop a lot of e-learning, like sort of even the processes, the workflows, just the concept of it was still really formative when you were coming up. So I don't know how
Yeah,
much this applies to you, but is there anything you wish you had known when you started out?
well, it's a really good question because I started in 1983. Okay, as I said, I was still attending university. Uh, the actual first e-learning before the term e-learning was coined, we were talking about computer-based training at the time, right? And the
Mhm.
first computer-based training initiative was from the National Science Foundation in 1960, and that was to create Plato. And then years later, in 1967, they funded a new thing called Ticket, TICCIT, and that's the tool. That's the one that I used to create the Italian course in college for the university. Okay, my point is to say this: I learned a lot at the time about what works and what doesn't work in learning. What people really liked and what they didn't like, how they stayed attentive to what the learning was, and when they got bored by it. Years and years later, we have so much more available to us, so many more tools available to us. But the actual principles of what works and what doesn't work hasn't changed all that much, except that now we have more opportunities to either one, distract them, or two, bore them, right? So what I wish I would have known back then, I'm going to be real frank about this, is I wish I had known how the e-learning industry would actually um, start to disintegrate a little bit over time,
Hmm.
because back then we were all focused on creating these courses that admittedly were much too large in most cases, much too full of things that maybe necessarily weren't as important. We had no idea what the term micro learning meant at the time because there was no term like that. It was all macro learning. Okay, but it worked, and pioneers like Gene and Mike Allen, from who created Authorware way back then. He's I learned that in 1990, so that was 7 years later, and he was already quite well known at the time as one of the pioneers. So I can't say necessarily I was one of the initial pioneers, but certainly I became one along the way. And I wish I had known how things would go because I would have fought a little bit more against it. And when I say that, I'm not trying to say that e-learning today is bad. No, there's a lot of really good e-learning being created, but there's a lot of really, really bad e-learning created too. Learning that doesn't really help people learn. And I know why that's happened. And I wish I could have, looked ahead and maybe helped to stem the tide. So
Yeah. No, totally. And that's interesting. That whole topic about, just sort of how e-learning has evolved. That's like a conversation unto itself. I would
yeah,
love
that's true.
to
Yeah.
have that with the group sometime because it is really fascinating to see even just, I mean, I started like basically in 2003 with the guild and just sort of watching how much everything has changed over time. It's really, really been a fascinating journey. Um, Let me move on to the next question. If you could have a tool or service that you don't currently have, what is it?
A tool or service that's out there now, or
Yeah,
one
that
that
exists that you don't currently have. Is there anything that you wish you had?
um there's a heck of a lot of knowledge I wish I had that I keep trying to pursue. That's certainly true. As far as tools are concerned, I've been testing a few tools lately that I really like a lot, and I just have to be able to, purchase them, at a certain point when it makes sense to,
Can you
and they're
name?
not really even that expensive.
Can you name
Power
it?
Director is a nice tool, a really nice tool that's out of Vietnam. I wrote a review of it for Learning Solutions magazine, and I really like it because it actually reminds me a lot of Storyline and Captivate, but actually adds a lot more features in some cases. Of course, it doesn't have some of the features the other two do, but it's pretty easy to use and it's a very nice tool and it's not that expensive.
Power
Um,
Direct.
Power Director, yeah, that's out of Hanoi, Vietnam. Uh,
Interesting.
Although you'd never know it because everything is in English and it's perfect English and so on. So that was one I looked at recently that I really liked, and I actually have a whole list in my Evernote about all the different tools that I want to start using and learning. But I'll stop there because we have limited time. I will say that I I do have tools that I've yet to really learn deeply, and so it's more a question of my time and making sure that I have dedicated time to learning. For instance, Premiere, which still stymies me a little bit. I know how to do a lot of things in Premiere, but I wish I knew it like an expert. Unfortunately, none of us can be an expert in everything. I just wish I could be. So
Not yet, anyway.
yeah, but Power Director is one I would recommend, and I really like Scenario VR as well a lot. I think it's such an easy tool to use, and yet you can create some pretty nice, nifty, virtual reality types of situations with that. And that's with Trivantis, and they just got bought out by eLearning Brothers.
Yeah.
But that's available. I may be working on a very exciting project with that very soon, and so I'm really excited about that because that's one that I really like using too. So.
Yeah, I like Delia's comment here. She says part of why I've stayed in L&D is the fact that with every passing year, there's a whole lot of new. She's never been
Never
bored.
been bored. Yeah. It can feel a little overwhelming sometimes, but I don't mind that. I'd rather have that than, being bored. So
Yeah. So how about this one? Is there a particular project that you're especially proud of that you'd like to mention? Something that you can think of, something that sticks out to you?
there've been a few that I really thought were excellent for the time I built them in. Okay. Again, with time, I probably would change some things about them because again, we have more technology available. One was just not that long ago. It was actually for the state of New Jersey and Rutgers University, and it was a website, an interactive e-learning learning website called Get Flu Savvy, and they just took it down like a year and a half ago because a lot of it was in Flash at the time, and of course that's kind of gone now. And it had to do with dealing with the flu, and it stemmed from it's just kind of a topic right now, right? But it stemmed from the H1N1 flu that happened in the late 2009 period. So it was not that long after that we created this website. It was very interactive, very fun, very engaging and instructive, and it would track how when you entered it, you would have a fever 104.5, and then as you entered each section and interacted with it and learned more, your fever would go down, and when it got down to 90.6, you had seen everything. So that's the sort of thing, and I liked that a lot because it allowed me to really push my talents. That one actually won me an eLearning Guild award at one of the Demo Fest.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's my other.
If there, that seems like that'd be a useful tool to have right now, even.
Yeah, unfortunately, it would have to be redone. In fact, I originally had created that one in Captivate, and we could redo that in HTML, publish it as HTML5. But we also had included a lot of things that we built directly in Flash, which we'd have to republish as HTML5 and animate. There's more than just, it's not an overnight thing. So yeah. But no, I think it would be very useful right now too. That's one of several. I did a big project for FEMA that was extremely. It was for inspectors of homes that have been damaged by earthquake, by flood, or by a high wind like tornado, and you could enter the home, and you had this software simulation part that you had to use and interact with, so that while you were looking in each room, you could indicate what damage was there, what things were gone for good, that sort of thing. TV is gone, broken, whatever, and that way within 3 days the homeowner was supposed to get a check to cover some of the cost. And that one was pretty extensive, and I really liked that one too, but it would have to be redone totally today because it was a few years ago. Yeah. So that's two examples, but there's plenty of others that I have that I'm proud of.
Sure. I'm sure. And so, and I know that, as far as, as an e-learning professional, you've always been really prolific. And so being that busy, like, is there somebody or something that keeps you inspired to just, to keep producing? Do you have something like that in your life?
Yeah, this is why it's so unusual for me right now to be, not working on projects, because I've never had a period like this where I didn't have a project to work on. and it's okay in one way, but financially, it really would be good to get a project now.
Right. Yeah.
And I am looking, by the way, so I haven't been sitting by waiting for something to drop in my lap. I've actually been pursuing it. As far as inspiration and such, there've been I always get inspired every time I attend a conference session or a, one of these chats here in TLEC or whatever. It's always I'm always learning something new. And just like who was it that uh, Della? Yeah, Della said I'm always learning something new, and that always inspires me. I really do gravitate a lot towards tools because I really love playing with tools and seeing how far I can push them. But design ideas, I'm always surprised by, oh wow, that's kind of a newish type design idea, or and so on, and maybe taking advantage of virtual reality or augmented reality, mixed reality, whatever case might be. I get inspired all the time, and that's it drives me crazy because I'm always like my list of things I want to learn and do gets longer and longer all the time. So
I love it. Yeah, totally. Best compliment you've ever received? Can you think of it?
oh, Joe, you're so handsome. Uh, no, that's never happened. Let's see. Best compliment I ever received. Uh, when I have taught classes and such, I get evaluations, and sometimes people do go out of their way to really write some nice things about me. Um, and I guess I can't say particularly one, but there's been a few where they basically have written things like, "You've changed my life."
Yeah.
You've given me ideas and opportunities that I never even knew about before, that sort of thing. And so I love that a lot because I love seeing the light turn on in people's eyes, and I love those aha moments and so on. The best compliment in my field would be that. The best compliment outside my field, there's been occasions where, I've been able to help somebody that has nothing to do with learning, and the kinds of, I don't do it for compliments, but when one comes, it's welcomed. I think I'll stop there. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
wanna-
no, that's great. I love it. I think you're totally, I mean, that's totally perfect. I love it.
Mhm.
So your best friend, how would your best friend describe what you do for a living?
My best friend. I have no friends, but if I had a friend, what would he or she say? What I do for a living? That's a really good question because my it's it's often the case that people don't really get it,
Yep.
uh, and sometimes I have to be careful not to say something like e-learning even, because when I do, I was in line once at my bank, and the new branch manager came over to talk to us as we were waiting in line, and she asked me what I did, and I told her I created e-learning, and she went, "Oh." And I knew immediately what that meant was like, and she told me, she goes, "Oh yeah, we got to do our e-learning here every year." And, and I said, "And I bet it's really boring, right?" "Yeah, it's boring." And, "Oh, we hate it," that sort of thing. And, my son has said the same thing about where he works. My other son, the same thing, it's not, it's a lot of bad e-learning out there that just drives people to tears, and so I try to be careful not to say the word e-learning, but I'll start using, other ways. And I make it a habit of saying pretty quickly, but I teach people how to do it right, that sort of thing too. So what would my best friend say? He would say, Joe creates websites that help people learn better. That's probably the best I can hope for in most cases. Yeah.
It is a good question, don't you think? I mean, I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Came up with it myself. What is something you wish you were really good at, other than what you're already good at? Something else.
Well, I regret the fact that when I was a teenager and I started learning guitar and piano, I didn't pursue it. And so that's something I wish I was better at that, because I absolutely adore music. I love music. I listen to music all the time. And there are times when I listen. There's a live version, for instance, of the Eagles' Hotel California. And I've listened to this one nonstop for a while because I just discovered it a while ago. It was in 2005, I think they did it. And hearing the uh, the 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 notes that he's plucking, not strumming, but plucking on the guitar in such beautiful sequence. It just drives me to almost have almost a nirvana. It's like I can't believe how how beautiful it is. And I wish I had the ability to do that, you know.
Uh,
And it's only because I never took the time to really learn it, because I guess it really wasn't as big of a passion as it is for those who do take that time, that I didn't do it. So that's, you know, I've written 4 books. I wish I had written more, and I could right now if I wanted to, actually. So, yeah, that's a good question, because I'm thinking it's all a matter of time and desire, really.
yeah, no, it definitely is. And if you
Yeah,
want to be good at music, it does take a little time.
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean,
Yeah, yeah. Of course, you're a musician,
well,
and I love,
not
and,
very, as much time as I
no,
put,
no,
I'm still
no.
not
You make
where I
good music, and I listen to your songs. I have them, you know. So the CD I bought a while ago, or the I forget in what form it was, but I have it, you know, digitized on my computer, and I listen to them, and that's good stuff, man. Really good.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. Other kinds of jobs that you have worked. What else has Joe Ganci done in his life to earn money?
Well, remember, I started in college with e-learning, so I pretty much have done mostly e-learning in my life.
Yeah,
Um, Other jobs I've done, I'm not one of those who can say I've done several jobs and then started e-learning later in life. I started early. But of course, to earn extra money, you know, when I bought my first house, I was delivering pizzas for a while. Okay. Um, and I learned a heck of a lot doing that, by the way. You know, it's one of the things I look back and I only did that one for a month, but I can't believe how much I learned in that month, and
right.
the people that I met and so on. When I was in college, when I first started there, I worked in a place that created computer chips, you know, integrated circuits. And so I learned all the different processes for the different steps in creating those, from the time that my first job, and this job of most people at the time, was to have this ceramic tray that would hold, I think it was, oh, I can't remember now, 200 or so silicon wafers, the big 5 1/4 inch ones at the time.
Yeah,
And then you'd have to put those into a furnace that was about 1500 degrees,
yeah,
so that it could get oxidized. And then after that, it would go to the next step. And it was always a series of mass of placing some kind of a chemical or material on the wafer, and then putting it through a burnout where it would mask the next level, and burn it out and so on. I'm not saying it right, but anyway, the point was that was also a really good job I liked, even though there were a lot of acids that we had to, you know, be careful not to get on ourselves and so on.
right.
Yeah.
That's that's interesting. Well, you know what's been interesting about that question is that so far in these interviews that I've been doing, it's like either like for instance, Toddy and Kim, they've done a bunch of jobs like before they became instructional designers, just a bunch. And then there's like you and Megan, and then who else? We had Rachel Weiss, have basically been an educator from kind of the start right out of college, and has just been doing it the entire time. So it's kind of fascinating to see that there isn't really an in between. But how about this? If you weren't an L&D professional, you'd be what? What do you think you'd be?
Famous rock star, of course, you know. Uh,
Like the rest of
Living in a mansion somewhere, of course, you know, or be, you know, in movies. You know, when I got the acting bug in high school, and I performed in a lot of different plays, and I can even say that I got to perform on stage in Paris. Of course, it was the International High School in Paris, but still, you know,
yeah,
it was one of these things. I was also very interested in politics, and so I participated in the Model United Nations in high school, and we got, and that in Europe, that was held in The Hague, in the Netherlands. And so we got to travel there every year. And one year I was Italy, and I was part of the delegation for Italy. Another year was Qatar, or Qatar, or however you like to pronounce that one, the country on the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. So that being said, I was always interested in politics. I was always interested in acting and in music. Politics and acting kind of go hand in hand, right? So here's that. But then the music, you know, I've always had a lot of interest in a lot of things. And if you look at my
yeah.
bookshelf or my Kindle library, I've got a lot of different interests. And
You
I
seem like
suspect,
a Renaissance kind of guy.
yeah, well, yeah, maybe in virtual, in what's the word? In parallel universes, I'm sure I'm doing a lot of different things, you know. So
Right. Hey, you know what? I got a question here from Delia.
yeah.
Um, I'd like you to answer. She said, "Your thoughts on the importance of being a full stack L&D professional? like be able to do it all, like ID, facilitate, analyze, evaluate, project manage, etc. What are your thoughts on that? How important is it?
Well, it's an awesome, very important question because at one time I would have said get, and I've said this a lot in my life actually, get really good at one thing, but know enough about the other things to, be dangerous. Okay. Um, and I still will probably say that, but because it's impossible to be, the best instructional designer and the best developer as well, and so on. But as I was saying earlier, things changed in time, and so now people who are instructional designers are also expected to develop the material, right? And we also don't even think about that as a separate kind of job nowadays. It's like, oh yeah, I create e-learning. That means I'm designing and developing it. And in fact, the terms themselves probably are starting to move away because we don't even distinguish those. Instead, a lot of times when we're creating e-learning, for instance, where we're getting right in the computer and starting to develop it without even thinking about, maybe scripting it out first or storyboarding it first. Most people know that they need to do that first because, a stitch in time saves nine, and you want to be prepared, you want to know things going to happen, and so on. But now everybody who's hiring always expects that you're wearing all these different hats, right?
Yeah.
And what I found, because I have, for the first time in my life, I've actually been interviewing with different companies and such, right? And so I've been seeing these job requirements lists and yeah, they're asking for, you got to be an expert in these 5 different tools, and you got to know the Office products inside and out, and you have to be the ultimate instructional designer, and this and that and the other thing. I was like, nobody can be all this, right? And in fact, when I actually get my interview and I mention something like, well, this is where I focus most of my energy, but I'm pretty good at this and this and this too. They're like, well, that's okay. We're not looking for somebody who knows it all. But if you read those lists, it makes it sound that you really do need to know it all. I would
Right.
say that to answer the question, what is it that you love best, and make sure you're really good at that. But then still, unfortunately, nowadays are expected to know it all, and so at least know and enough about the others to be able to speak to them, even if it means in the end you're getting other people to do that part of it for you. One thing I do think is important is if somebody is asking other people to do development work for them, right? Or design work for them, they really should know enough about development or design to know whether or not the people are being efficient, or whether they're being hoodwinked, or whatever the case. Even if you're just managing it, you really should know enough about those things to know whether someone is playing right by you. So it really does require that we study all the time and understand things all the time. So
No, I this is it's a pretty it's a pretty popular topic, I think, in TLDC. Just having to have, like, just all these different skill sets that you have to have just to be able to qualify sometimes, and it's like it's almost unreasonable in some ways. And it's
yeah, I like what Kim wrote, but I'm not sure what she meant when she said not everyone. So maybe she can clarify that. But that's okay. We can keep going.
yeah. Okay, so I've got one more question from Josh. They're one tool to focus on of the requirements in an ID job listing. So you were I think you alluded to that a little bit, but let me ask that again. Is there one tool to focus on of the requirements in an ID job listing? So maybe, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you saying what would be the most important um, tool to focus on?
E-learning development tool, you mean?
Yeah, I think, well, if you look at the question, maybe you can clarify it for us,
Let me
Josh.
see if I.
Yeah, it's like, is there one tool to focus on of the requirements in an ID job listing? Like, yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Again, I would just repeat what I just said. I think that, well, first of all, if you really hate development, I wouldn't focus on tools at all. I would know enough about them to be dangerous, but I would certainly focus on what I know best, which might be design or whatever. And by the way, sometimes, if you're like, oh, I hate tools, have you ever tried using one? No, but I know I hate them. Sometimes it's good to get out of your comfort zone and try something, but you may just find yourself falling in love with that, right? Or you may find it just as bad as you thought it was going to be. So it's really a question of trying things out, but then don't knock your head against the wall and keep trying to do something that you really hate doing, right? So which tool? gosh, the two big tools are still, of course, Storyline and Captivate, and I'm still finding a lot of people asking for both. So I would say if you want to, find a job in the industry, those are the two I would focus on. Um, they both have different price points. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. Um, and I always, when you're talking to when I'm talking to a client, if they already have a tool established in house, I make sure that I know that tool, and and usually that means Storyline or Captivate, right? So I do know those. But I've had Lectora as well, and that's another tool I really like using, etc. Like a tool like Power Director, as I mentioned earlier, that's not a tool that anybody's really using yet, but that would be a great tool for someone to pick up and use if someone says, I don't really care what you use as long as, the end result is great, because that's what I would try to do there. So hope that answers.
That's a good answer. I really like the fact that you mentioned, get good at whatever you love, because I think that's important, that you have, because then that passion will show when
Yeah.
you're actually like building stuff out, and that's kind of been my own journey, even with TLDC. It's like, what are the parts about this that I like? And
Yeah.
so just sticking with the things I love. Okay, last question, because we're pretty much out of time, but I gotta ask this. If there's one thing that people should know about you, what is it, Joe?
No, I can't tell you that. I can't say that either.
It's not that tattoo. We can't talk about tattoos.
Tattoos? No, I don't have any, unfortunately. It's one of those things. One thing, well, I guess you might say that the one thing that maybe most people don't know about me is that I would love, but this is kind of common, but I would love to write the next great American novel or the great American Stephen King type of, thing, or science fiction or whatever. I just love writing, and that's one of those areas where I'm always going to be a frustrated author, because I never it's so hard now to get anything, make any money in that field anyway, unless you're already a well-known author. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess that oh, and we just celebrated 40 years of marriage. How's that? 40 years, yeah.
It's good that you've been married for 40 years and that you're, a frustrated author. I actually love that. I really think that's probably my favorite question out of the group, because it just kind of really you get to know somebody kind of closer to the core when they answer that
I
question.
guess so. When I say I've been married 40 years, people, I always like to say, well, how old do you think I am now? So yeah, I got married at 19, actually. So, and
Wow.
I'll be 60 in June. So
Wow.
that's something that people don't know about me. I got married young. I was 19.
You did. It is
Yeah.
young.
And we're still married. So never look
That
back.
is amazing. That is so great, Joe. That is awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Joe. I love talking to you. Every time I see you, I love getting the big pat on the back or the hug. So hopefully it won't be long before I get to see you again.
I agree. I love talking to you too. I'm going to put my email address in here in case anyone wants to contact me, and also I'm eLearning Joe on Twitter.
Yeah.
And on LinkedIn, I'm look for Joe Ganci. I couldn't get eLearning Joe. Somebody else got eLearning Joe on Twitter, and
Really?
it doesn't even use it. So yeah, I'm trying to see if I can get it from them.
But it has a picture of you. I've been tweeting to eLearning Joe, and it looks like
No,
you.
I'm sorry. I meant on LinkedIn, not Twitter.
Oh, on LinkedIn. Okay.
I said Twitter. I meant LinkedIn. Yeah, somebody on LinkedIn has eLearning Joe, but you can still find me by using that. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, cool. And everybody, if you want to check out more of these interviews, I have them on the new thetldc.com website. Just look for the community showcase section of that site. You can see the interviews we've done with with Toddy and Kim and Rachel and Megan. I'm just building these up. This is a way for our community to kind of get to know one another without conferences, without meetups, without these types of things. It's just a little harder to do that, but I figured just doing these short video profiles would be fun, and they're super fun for me. And I hope you guys enjoy them too.
I know.
And with that, yeah, we'll see you next time. I actually do have Jenny Hill is going to be on tomorrow, so we have another profile happening. And then also I have upcoming dates for the accessibility playlist. I'll be releasing those pretty soon. So thanks everyone for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you, Luis. Bye bye.